Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to do this beaded bead today, which is the Puffy Duo bead. And it's based on herringbone and peyote stitch. It has a little bit of a triangular shape and then kind of has those eyes that stick out. You could actually do this with different colors and actually make it look like an eye too, just another idea. But we're going to be using MiniDuos, which MiniDuos are the miniature version of the Super Duos. They are 2x4mm, and I'm going to be using the white gray luster bead. We're going to be using 12 of our color for the sides, or the ends and the middle. So I'm going to be using 12 of those white gray luster beads. I'm also using a second color of my MiniDuos, and this color is the mint luster, and I'm going to be using 30 of those beads. Those are going to kind of decorate the sides here. In addition to that, I have RounDuos. That's why I'm calling it the Puffy Duo bead. And I'm using MiniDuos and RounDuos. So RounDuos, you only actually need 3 of them for your corners of your center of your bead. And then I'm going to use some 11Os here on the sides, and I'm actually going to be using 18 11Os in the Duracoat Galvanized silver color. I also have sitting near me some super glue glue to glue the ends of my thread. I have my thread burner, then the Thread Zap 2 in order to burn down my ends, and I have my slip and snip scissors to cut the thread off the spool. I also usually have sitting around a wide jaw or a needle nose pliers, and that's going to be to flatten out the end of my thread before putting it into my needle. I'm going to be using a size 10 needle, and this is a Pony brand needle, and I am using about 16 inches of green wildfire thread in 0.006. I'm using green because I'm in those green tones that I'm working with. For the example bead, I actually used green as well. I'm also going to show you guys an alteration that you can do by using the SO bead, which is almost like a flatter, longer version of the Super Duo bead as well. So you can kind of put any of the any of those duo beads in the middle of this project. To get started, we're going to have our needle threaded, and again I have about 16 inches of thread. If you know you would like to do 2 to do a set of earrings, or you want to do a bracelet with a bunch of them on, you can cut extra thread. That way you only have to thread the needle once, so you could cut a double length of thread. We're going to be creating a pattern, again that herringbone pattern and peyote, creating a triangular shape. To do that, I'm going to start with 3 beads, and that's easy to remember because 3 is the sides of a triangle. And I'm going to be using that gray luster, dropping it down to the base of my thread, and I only need just a tiny little bit in my hand to tie onto, and I'm going to tie a knot. That's going to create almost that fan or propeller shape, and I'm going to make sure that I make a double knot out of that. Once I do this and create that double knot, leave yourself just a little bit more thread. You can, even if you want to pull it tighter, grab those pliers and make sure that knot is pulled nice and tight. Eventually we'll come back and we'll actually glue that. Right now that's not giving you any sort of opening in the middle if you would want to put a head pin or anything through, but you actually get one that's created as you're working with it. So don't worry, because I can actually get a wire through that center of the bead and be able to put something through that. You can also string through it or drop extra beads. You can make this a bead for fringe as well. Would look fun hanging off of this center bead. So once I have those 3 beads and I have that tied, I'm going to take my needle and thread through one more of my beads. And I'm going through the base or the bottom hole, the hole that's closest to all the other beads. I'm then going to take my needle from the bottom hole to the top hole of the same bead, going in the opposite direction, which is going to lay some of my thread on my side of my gray MiniDuo. Once I'm out the side here, I'm actually going to be adding my herringbone stitch in. And the herringbone stitch is going to be going up the sides here and have the little beads kind of in play. If you want the little beads here on the side, one thing I forgot to mention is you can do them with or without If you do want them, you're just going to take the beads around one more time as you're coming through. So take that thread back out, add a bead, go through the next MiniDuo, and so on in your circle. And you can do either version. This decorates the end a little bit. I've done both ways. Once you're through then that MiniDuo, then you go back up to the top. On the side here is when we're going to be adding our herringbone style of a stitch. I'm going to be switching from my gray color to my mint color and using my 11-0 seed beads in between. That creates the peak here in this triangular form. I'm going to be adding my MiniDuo, 11 MiniDuo. Then I'm going to sew through the next gray MiniDuo from the center and through the outer hole and give a tight pull. That's what's going to create that herringbone effect. Kind of push that thread into the bottom, and we're going to continue to do that the whole way around. So we're going to do it 3 times, adding our MiniDuos with our 11-0s and going the whole way around. It's going to create almost a flower shaped pattern, which we are eventually going to start to pull in as we add our next row. Once I add this one here, I'm going to sew through that first MiniDuo that my thread was coming out of, and I'm also going to sew through my first mint bead that I added onto that row. I'm then going to switch my thread from coming out the bottom hole of that bead to the top hole. When I'm above one of the gray luster beads, I'm going to add one of my MiniDuos, and I'm still going with that mint color. And I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next set of that herringbone. Once I'm above my seed bead and my herringbone section, I'm going to add one more of my herringbone pattern and then sew through the top hole of the MiniDuo on the other side. When I'm above the gray bead, just add one MiniDuo, sewing through then to come out in the center of your herringbone stitch. Once I'm through that center of the herringbone stitch, I'm going to add another collection of 3 beads, the 2 MiniDuos with an 11-0 in the middle, sewing through that MiniDuo on the other side. And you can see there's a curvature starting to happen. So it's starting to get that curve to it. That's what we want. I'm over one of my gray beads, so I'm just going to do 1 bead. That's where we're doing our peyote pattern in between that row, and then the herringbone here on the sides. I'm going to do my last set of herringbone. I'm going to sew through my last little herringbone section, sew through the first bead that I added in this row, pull nice and tight, and then I'm going to sew from the bottom hole to the top hole going in the opposite direction on that first mint bead and pull it nice and tight. You can see that's starting to get that concave shape. When I'm on the sides here then, I have my 3 beads in place. This is 3 rows deep of my 11-0s. That's going to help you keep track of when you need to add your RounDuos. You can make this bead larger if you wanted by doing more rows. That's up to you. So you can make it larger also if you wanted to use regular super duos. You could use super duos rather than the MiniDuos. That's kind of a little trick, but the MiniDuos make it nice and little and fun. Once I'm coming out here, I'm going to be adding my gray beads then on the side as well as my RounDuo beads. On the side here where there's 3 beads sticking up, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to be doing 2 beads in my gray between those in a peyote fashion. When I'm at the center of the ridge here of my seed beads, that's when I'm going to be adding my RounDuo bead. So I'm coming out here on one of the sides and I'm going to add my 1 gray bead and sew through the top hole of the next MiniDuo that's in line. Once I'm coming out on the side of my seed beads, I'm going to grab my RounDuo bead and sew through. I'm catching all the top holes of my RounDuo beads in that mint color. Once I'm out the side here, I have that gap for my peyote stitch to add 2 of my gray beads. So So I add those two, one at a time, then sewing through my next MiniDuo. Once I'm on this side here, after I add two, I'm getting ready for that top of that herringbone stitch. I'm going to add my RounDuo bead and sew through. Add my two MiniDuos in my gray color by adding one, sewing through the top hole of the next MiniDuo. Add another, sew through the top hole of the next MiniDuo. Give nice tight pulls at the end of each of these. I'm at the end of my seed bead row, so I'm going to add my last RounDuo bead. Sew through the next empty hole of my MiniDuo. And when I'm coming out here, I'm going to add in my last of my gray MiniDuo in this line. I'm also going to sew through that mint MiniDuo and sew through the first hole, the bottom hole of that first gray one that I added. Once I'm coming out there, give a nice tight pull. I'm going to sew up along the side. So I'm going from the bottom hole, or the hole closest to my left hand, to the top hole of that same MiniDuo. So it's going to be coming out then of a gray MiniDuo. And what we're going to be doing now is kind of forming that other side and pinching it in. To do so, I'm going to go back to my green color here. And those three that are left are going to be saved for the ends. So I'm going to add a green in between the grays and a green before my RounDuo bead. I'm going to sew through the second hole of the RounDuo. And this whole row here, the whole time around, I'm just going to be adding my green beads. So you're going to be adding those mint luster beads the whole way around the circle. You can see I'm not worrying too much about pulling the thread tight because I'm going to worry about that when I get to the end of my row. So in between each of my RounDuo beads, you're going to end up with three of the mint. After I have those three mint beads in each place, I'm going to sew through that first gray bead and the first mint that I put on. Give a nice tight pull and tighten up that whole project. And then I'm going to sew from the bottom hole of that mint luster to the top hole. When I'm above the gray beads here in the empty space, I'm going to add one of my green beads. Sew through the next green that's already there from the previous row. When I'm on the side of my RounDuo bead, I'm going to pick up one of my 11-ohs and sew through the MiniDuo on the other side. And then it's going to pull that in and pop that RounDuo up. On the sides here, I'm going to add my MiniDuos. I'm going to be adding two of those in each. Give nice tight pulls. And then I'm going to add my 11-oh on the side of my RounDuo. Kind of force that RounDuo to sit up. Two more in. And then I'm going to use my 11-oh, catch my bead there, and pull that nice and tight. And then I'll have one more of my green to put on. Thought I counted 30, but I was one off. I'll put that in place. Sew through the last green as well as the first one that you put on from this row. Nice tight pull. Go from the top hole, or the bottom hole closest to my left hand, to the top hole closest to my right. And we're going to be coming out that green one. Same thing is going to occur when I add the next beads here. I only have my 3 grays left, so I know that I need to add those grays in between the green beads. And when I'm coming out right near my 11-oh, I'm going to add that in place. Pulling nice and tight. Basically, you're alternating between adding an 11-oh and a gray bead. And this is really going to pull that whole project in. Once I have that, I'm going to sew through the last of my mint color bead and the first of the gray MiniDuo that I put on. Give a tight pull, switch from the top hole or the bottom hole to the top hole, adding in my 11/0 seed beads and sewing around in a circle. And this is then going to finish up your project. And that gives a nice tight pull. And that's going to create that puffy duo bead, which has those awesome round duos kind of sticking up there on the top. And they just create a little bit more of a shine with that lustery finish of the green. You can really play around with colors here and play around with your design. And you can reinforce your last loop here by going around the whole entire thing. If you want to, you can use a jump ring to add to. You can then just take your thread here, go underneath a bridge thread that you've created, and form a knot. I should have left myself just a tiny bit more thread. Once I have my knot formed, I'm going to go ahead and glue the end of it. And when you do glue the end of it, you're going to want to make sure that you try not to glue through a bead. When I do that, what I'm going to do is take my super glue and just dab it right on the knot. Give a little blow away from the hole, so towards the outside. Pull that thread a little bit to the side, and I'm going to trim down that thread. I can take my burner then if I need to, if I have a little tiny bit that's left up, and burn through that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. After I do my knot there, I'm just going to have to take it underneath my threads. I might have to grab my tweezers to get it through the top of the hole. But once I have that, we're going to have the RounDuo here puffing up on the side. And you can see, depending on how tightly you pull it, this one I pulled really tightly. This one I did not pull as tightly. I have a hard time pulling tightly when I'm kind of videoing. But that's going to get you that different effect as far as how wide it's going to be and how narrow it's going to be as well. If you do want to make them bigger, again, you can do that. You can make them smaller to bigger and kind of increase in size, and you could actually add these together, which would be really, really fun to do and create a whole bracelet based on that. Or you could put beads in between. Again, you could take it and create a little fringe coming off of it. You could actually create earrings out of them, which would be really fun. So play around with this and your different MiniDuo beads that you do. Again, you can substitute any 2-hole bead out for the middle. If you wanted to, you just have to give a nice tight pull. You could use a crystal in here as well if you really want it to shine and shimmer and pop. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you get a chance, pick up some of these MiniDuos. They're really fun. You get to play with them and actually create the smaller scale version, basically, of a lot of Super Duo designs. If you wanted to, again, you could kind of make earrings and a pendant by doing the pendant with the Super Duos, making it bigger, and then the earrings here with these MiniDuos. So if you would like to see more of these videos, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also visit us online at PotomacBeads.com. If you get a chance, you can actually go to our website, check out the classes page as well as the location, see if there's a store near you. If you can't get to one of our locations, you can always shop with us online. In fact, there's actually links below here in the details below the video to all the different products that were used in the video. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and have fun making the Duo Puffy Beads.